Perpetual anticipation is good for the soul, but it's bad for the heart. It's very good for practicing self-control. It's very good for morals, but bad for moral. It's very bad. It can't be too boring. It's quite bad. It's very good for business. It's bad for the heart. It's very good to pay.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Arts Beat Radio and TV. That little tune that opened our program today is Perpetual Anticipation from Stephen Sondheim's musical A Little Night Music. You're listening to Arts Beat Radio and Television today. I'm Mark Auerbach, your host. Today we're celebrating the 90th birthday of the prolific Broadway composer Stephen Sondheim. With me in the studio is John Pike, formerly of Goodspeed Musicals, who's now a musical theater teacher at the Hart School. And online, two of my favorite actors named Evan. The first one is Evan Pappas. And Evan Pappas and John Pike and I go way back to Goodspeed when John Pike was editing a magazine called Show Music, and he asked me to write a story about a guy in Promises who turned out to be Evan Pappas. It was the very first profile piece that I ever wrote as a reporter. And Evan and I have remained friends over the years. The second Evan is Evan Casey, who's a member of the Capitol Steps, the political satire musical group that I do a lot of work with. And Evan spent the summer up here at Cranwell, as he has in other years, performing the current show is called The Lion Kings. And I learned in the course of interviewing Evan Casey that Evan has done a prolific amount of Stephen Sondheim musicals in Washington, D.C. And after doing Cranwell this summer, starred in as the baker in Into the Woods at Ford's Theater. So, gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Later. Thank you. Mark. Thanks for having me.
Well, my first question, and I'll throw this out to John Pike. What was the first Stephen Sondheim show that you ever saw, and the first Stephen Sondheim show that you ever did?
Wow, the first Stephen Sondheim show that I ever saw probably was A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, probably back when I was a kid, maybe in the mid-'60s. And the first one I ever did actually was Company, and that's when I was in college. And I played Larry. And from that point, I was a love affair with the work of such a genius for at least some 40 years or so.
What about you, Evan Pappas?
Evan Pappas. Hey, John Pike, long time. How are you?
Very long time, Evan. Great to hear you. Great to hear you doing so well.
Thank you. It's funny. I did Company in college, also playing Bobby. 19 years old, playing a 35-year-old. What did I know? I think that was my first Sondheim. Yeah. Also.
And same for me. I got to play Bobby. I was, I think, 19 or 20 in college, and then for my senior directing project I choreographed a segment from Company, the TikTok and Barcelona segment, but that was my first try at Sondheim, and it was a very short-lived thing because the only other Sondheim show that I ever did as a performer was A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. Yeah. What about you, Evan Casey?
Also, well, we've all done Company. I did Company. It was not my first Sondheim, but I did Company. I played Harry at Signature Theater in Arlington, Virginia, about maybe 8 years ago. But my first Sondheim experience was also A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum when I was in high school. When I was about, 16, maybe, I played Hero in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
When you guys think about Stephen Sondheim, and you've had prolific experiences with him, Evan, you as an actor, Evan Pappas as an actor, director, and John as well. What do you think has made him as popular among the general public as he's been for over a half century?
Wow. That's for me, I just think the man challenges us. I personally like to be challenged when I go to a musical or a play, or entertainment is great, but he makes you think. Nobody writes lyrics as he does. Nobody, in my opinion. And I think the public appreciates that. I hope they appreciate that. That's how I feel. I'm in awe of this man.
I think
Go ahead.
I think people that like him are totally in awe of him. And I mean, I've seen many Sondheim shows over the years that there are people that go back and see them 3, 4, or 5 times. They're like total fans.
It's because the depth of the writing allows you to kind of return often. One of my favorites is Follies because it's like an onion. You can peel it and peel it and peel it and never get to the center of how complex a piece it is. And I think...
Agreed 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Follies 3 times in New York in the last revival with Bernadette Peters. And it was by happenstance. I really wanted to see it once. And then somebody said to me, well, I have tickets and somebody that I had bought tickets for can't go. Would you like to see it? So I went a second time and then decided to see it again when I was in the city. And I could have gone another 10 times because each time I went, I saw something different. And the same thing with Company. I mean, at the time that I did Company the first time, I had no idea as a teenager, I had no idea what relationships were all about. And seeing Company, a revival of it a couple of years ago at Barrington Stage, I realized I'm an adult now, I'm a big boy, and I understand about relationships and commitment. I'd like to see it again in New York where it's in previews now.
It was also the challenge of Company for original audiences in 1970 because it was not the sequencing of the story. People kept looking for a specific storyline that was that they had not seen it. And in this form, and Sondheim even said, we put the songs in like nuts in a fruitcake. It wasn't the traditional Rodgers and Hammerstein way of telling a story, so many people went back to see it a second time just to see how all the pieces fit together.
Now, Evan Pappas, you had a chance to do London, Follies in London when it premiered there. Did you? Was Sondheim a part of it?
Oh yeah, it was thrilling. Because the show was rewritten. We called it the Kinder, Gentler Follies. They rewrote numbers. All the Sondheim purists were, a lot of them were so angry about it. A lot of people embraced it. They took out The Road You Didn't Take, and they put in Country House. And people were a little funny about it. He was very much a part of it, as was Goldman. Rewrites. We would be in rewrite meetings, in rehearsals and previews. It was pretty thrilling. It was pretty exciting to be a part of that process of a rewrite of a cult favorite. Everybody's got their Follies stories,
Now that production of Follies, I guess they reverted back to the original one in the subsequent revivals. But that Follies had quite the cast.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm still in touch with a lot of them. In fact, the us four youngers, we stay in great touch. We're old enough now to play we should be playing the older. Somebody should mount a production for us, But we're quite close. It makes me very happy. And a lot of the elders, I just saw Diana Rigg when she was here doing My Fair Lady. And I haven't seen her in 30 years, so that was exciting to see her after all this time, because we became very close during that year that I was there.
Were you there for just a year, or did the show run longer?
The show ran longer. I got a year out of it. One of those equity exchanges, British equity exchanges. So I did a year, and then it was recast, and it ran another, I think, 7 or 9 months. I think. Yeah.
So it was quite the hit in London compared to here, where it had a very short run originally on Broadway, and then even the revival with Bernadette Peters had a short run.
Yeah, it really did. It had a great run over there across the pond. Yeah.
Evan Pappas, have you done any Sondheim subsequent to that?
Well, while I was there, we did Merrily We Roll Along. The four of us youngers, we mounted a production, and we played the 4 principal roles in Merrily, and it was a 2-night event that was it was a massive event, very popular. That we took the script and cut it down to 90 minutes with the songs and did one 90-minute through, and it was fantastic. Even the National at one point, who would come to see it, thought, maybe we should mount this, but it never happened, unfortunately, because it was a really unique way of doing it. And then I got to go after that to Leicester Haymarket Theatre to do a production there with. I was the only one who went from that production, but it was pretty exciting. Yeah.
And Evan Casey, you do a lot of work with Signature Theater in Washington, D.C. So is that where you do the majority of your Sondheim work, or have you performed in some of the other theaters?
I've performed some Sondheim in other places, but Signature Theater in D.C. has become really known as one of the greatest outposts of Sondheim production regionally in the country, and they sort of made their mark doing that. And Eric Schaefer, the artistic director there, has developed a great relationship with Sondheim over the years, so they make it part of their seasonal mission to produce Sondheim, and they typically produce at least one Sondheim a year. So it's sort of the home base for Sondheim regionally, at least in the D.C. area. So I do a lot of work with them when I do it, yes.
Now, the Follies that got to Broadway a few years ago with Bernadette Peters, that actually began at Kennedy Center, and that was associated with Signature Theater.
It was directed by Eric Schaefer, who is the artistic director of Signature, and he made quite a name for himself as a Sondheim producer and director over the years, in part from early productions that he did at Signature when he first started the company with Donna Migliaccio, and then he was the artistic director of the Sondheim Celebration, which was produced by the Kennedy Center in the early 2000s, which was a fantastic event over the course of a summer where they produced, I think, like 5 or 6 Sondheim musicals in rep, of which I think Eric directed, 2, and several other great directors directed some of the other ones, but they produced Company and Sweeney and Little Night Music and Passion and Sunday in the Park with George, and then I think they had a touring production of Pacific Overtures, I think from a Japanese company. So they had a lot of it was a legendary summer celebration of Sondheim. It was a great experience in DC. I was not part of that. I was a little on the young side to be a part of that at the time, but it was a great event.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here to acknowledge our underwriters who support ArtsBeat Radio and TV and other community programming here on 89.5 FM WSKB and Westfield Community Programming Channel 15 for TV folks. As we segue into this break, I found a recording of Evan Pappas in the London original cast recording of Follies. So we're going to have a little Evan Pappas song and dance here before we go into our underwriter acknowledgments, and we'll be right back.
Young Evan Pappas.
Very young Evan Pappas.
Sally dear, now that we're man and wife, I will do wonders to make your life soul stirring and free of care.
If we fight and we might all concede, furthermore, dear, should your ego need bolstering, I'll do my share.
But though I'll try my utmost to see you never frown,
and though I'll try to cut most of our expenses down,
I've some traits, I warn you, to which you'll have objections.
I too have a cornucopia of imperfections. I may burn the toast.
Oh well, I may make a rotten host.
Do tell, but no matter what goes wrong,
love will see us through to something better comes along. And may vex your folks.
Okay, may interrupt your jokes.
You may, but
if I come on too strong,
love will see us through to something better comes along. I may play cards all night and come home at 3.
just leave a lie on the porch for
face. Please do, I may clutter up the place.
Me too,
But the minute we embrace to love's old sweet song, feel that the sweetest word of something better comes along.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
Listen to me, Michael Buster McMahon, Mondays 8 to 10 a.m. to learn the stories behind your favorite songs. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Artsbeat Radio, everybody. We're celebrating the 90th birthday of Stephen Sondheim, which takes place on March 22nd. A revival of his musical company opens on Broadway that night. It's a great way to be 90 and have one of your 50-year-old shows come back with a lot of excitement into New York. John Pike is sitting with me at the anchor desk today, and online with us is Evan Casey, who's a member of the Capitol Steps, who has performed a lot of Sondheim in Washington, D.C., and Evan Pappas, who's the artistic director of the Argyle Theater in Long Island, who has performed, acted, and directed a lot of Sondheim over the years. And Evan's had a Broadway career that's included a chorus line, My Favorite Year in Parade, as well. Thanks, guys, for joining me this morning to celebrate a legendary composer. John Pike, aside from the fact that Stephen Sondheim shares a birthday with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and those two guys have written more Broadway shows in recent years than anybody else, give us a couple of his career highlights.
A couple of his career highlights. Sondheim, well, it's almost like an entire career of highlights. Certainly, he came to prominence for the public as an individual, as a composer lyricist in the 70s with company, because it was such a mold breaker in terms of what it did storytelling wise, and his collaboration with Harold Prince. And many of these things can be seen, actually, if any of our listeners have a chance to go to Lincoln Center, because there is a Harold Prince celebration at the New York Public Library, and you can actually see the original set models of Company, Follies, and Pacific Overtures that were done by set designer Boris Aronson. But as far as Sondheim himself, it's almost hard to pick the highlights of his career.
Well, one of the things, for those of you in Western Massachusetts, he's a graduate of Williams College, just up kind of like over the pike and north of Pittsfield. And they're doing a lot of Sondheim retrospectives right now. But he really started as a lyricist, and his lyrics to West Side Story can be seen on Broadway in a controversial revival right now. He wrote the lyrics for Gypsy. That is a legendary show. It comes around every couple of years in a revival with somebody. And then Anyone Can Whistle, which he wrote the music. Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which he wrote the music. But he's kind of won every award you could possibly want to receive.
Absolutely, from Kennedy Center Honors to more Tonys than you can imagine. And one of the things I think that keeps him so much in the public is because he has a perspective, unlike most artists, that he is so willing to change whatever works best for the production at that time. I'm sure Evan Pappas can speak to that, certainly with Follies, but certainly with two productions that are going on right now, the production of Company that is opening in about a month, and the production of West Side Story, which he is the sole surviving author of. And if any of your listeners saw the interview on 60 Minutes about 2 weeks ago, you see how forward-thinking he is, that nothing is carved in stone. He doesn't look at his musicals as films where they're set now and forever. He looks at whatever a director wants to do in the future.
Evan Pappas, in your new role as an artistic director of a regional theater, have you done any Sondheim to date, or do you think that you'd like to?
Oh my gosh, I want to do it so bad. I would love to. At the moment, as we're learning our demographic, we're just finishing up our second season with a cabaret that I'm also directing. We're finding out there that familiarity is what they want. And so I'm trying to find a way. What is the one Sondheim show that they would flock to? It's interesting in the regions. The Signature in D.C., as Evan Casey was saying, I am so impressed that they have managed to do a repertoire of all Sondheim all the time. I mean, I would love that if I could. One day, I'm going to get there. One day.
And Evan Casey, question for you. You've been with the Capitol Steps for many years. I know they parody every kind of show tune under the sun, and Rodgers and Hammerstein seem to get a lot of the parody. Has Capitol Steps ever parodied a Sondheim song?
That's a good question. To my immediate memory, no, not one that I've done, at least recently. But that is in part a testament to the greatness of Sondheim and the complexity of his work. It's not easily parodiable. There are certainly some songs that maybe we all know very, very well. Comedy Tonight, maybe Being Alive, Send in the Clowns, some basic hits that we're all quite familiar with. But many of his works are so intrinsically linked to the shows in which they are a part of, and which is not to say certainly taking them outside of that they're not valuable and interesting and wonderful to listen to and appreciate and work well on their own, but that they have such a value and an inherent worth to the narrative structure in which they are already a part that it does not make it quite as simple to pull out as you would for songs from certain other composers from the musical theater canon.
Well, we're going to segue into another break to acknowledge underwriters, and I found a little snippet of something that Evan Casey did at Signature Theater, and it's from the musical Assassins, which is probably one of the most challenging Sondheim musicals around and is about to be revived in New York City. It's about a group of presidential assassins and assassin wannabes, and it was something that Evan Casey did at the Signature Theater. So we're going to take a little break. We'll give you a snippet of that. The song is called Everybody's Got the Right from the Signature Theater production of Assassins. Then we'll acknowledge our underwriters, and we'll be back more to talk Sondheim.
Connects, connects, connects. Everybody's got the right to some sunshine. Not the sun, but maybe one of its beams. One of its beams. Rich man, poor man, black or white. Everybody gets a bite. Everybody just hold tight to your dreams. Everybody's got the right to their dreams.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568 3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Underwriting for community radio is provided by the YMCA of Greater Westfield. Every day, the YMCA strengthens the community through programs and services focused on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. For all the Y's many programs and services, visit us on the web at www.westfieldymca.org. The YMCA, 67 Court Street in downtown Westfield. We're more than a gym. We're a cause.
Hi, it's Bob Plass, and I have Wow, It's Tuesday, every Tuesday, 6 to 8. Wow, it's Tuesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
I did it!
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back to Arts Beat Radio, everyone. I'm Mark Auerbach. Peter Coles is our chief engineer today. Sitting with me in the studio is John Pike from the Hart School in Hartford, Connecticut, formerly with Goodspeed Musicals. Online with us, we have two Evans. Evan Casey, who's a member of the Capitol Steps, who has appeared in many Sondheim musicals in the Washington, D.C. area where he lives and works. And Evan Pappas, who starred in the London production of Follies before making a splash on Broadway in A Chorus Line and Parade and My Favorite Year. While we took a break, John Pike came up with a little tidbit about the piece from Assassins we played.
Yeah, we're just listening to Everybody's Got the Right, and that Sondheim score, Sondheim was doing a pastiche. Most of the numbers of there were a reflection of other composers and lyricists, and Everybody's Got the Right. He always said he had written the vamp and the structure of it based on songs that Kander and Ebb might have wrote. That's John Kander and Fred Ebb. And he was kind of thinking of New York, and some of the other, and the vamp from Chicago. He said this felt right for that moment. So Sondheim pays tribute often to other composers and lyricists in his work, and certainly Follies that Evan Pappas was part of was a complete pastiche score of many composers and lyricists from the 20s and 30s.
If we could, all of us have the chance today to play a role in a Sondheim show that we're now age appropriate for. Evan Pappas, what Sondheim roles would you like to play?
Oh, well, it's so obvious that I'm ready for Old Buddy. I'm ready for it. You know, what am I, 85 now or something like that? I don't know.
And what about you, Evan Casey?
I've always wanted to play George in Sunday in the Park with George because I think there's no better musical that tells the story of the artist's struggle and journey. But it's actually funny because I played the Baker last year, and that was never really at the top of my list. Not that I didn't love Into the Woods or think it was a wonderful musical, but it's just never been at the forefront of my mind of a role that I would desperately want to play. But sometimes in our lives as performers and as artists, things come along where you didn't realize that you were meant to do them until you're doing them. And because of who I am, and I was a relatively recent father, my son is 5 now, and just the number of circumstances within my own life, it's sort of a Sondheim role that I realized I should have been wanted to be playing all along, and was lucky I got the opportunity to do so.
Well, I think for myself, if they did a gender fluid version of Follies, I always wanted to sing Broadway Baby. I think I'm too young for it, but maybe in a year or two. John?
Well, I gave up my acting career a long, long time ago. But if Evan Pappas is doing Older Buddy, I would be very happy to do Older Benjamin Stone.
That sounds good.
Let's do it.
That sounds good. So we've got a Follies revival coming up soon. Evan Casey, you portray many current political figures in your role in the Capitol Steps, everything from Bernie Sanders to Putin. Could you, as Bernie Sanders, maybe quote a line or two from one of your favorite Sondheim shows?
Let's see. How about this? Here we go. Ready? Somebody hold me too close. Somebody hurt me too deep. Somebody sit in my chair or in my sleep. Make me aware of being alive. I hope you got the proper, I hope you pulled down the volume a little bit. Bernie only has one volume. So.
Yeah, we can ramp up the volume, but that's absolutely terrific.
That's great.
Some of the other questions that I have for you guys. First of all, for Evan Casey, you intermittently leave the Capitol steps to do Sondheim or other musical theater, and I guess you've done some non-musicals as well. The Washington theater scene has really grown. Is Signature the only place where you see Sondheim, or do other theaters tackle it too?
Other theaters do tackle it too. I did the production of Into the Woods I did was at Ford's Theater. Only Theater did a production of Sweeney Todd a couple of years ago, as did Rep Stage. But Signature has really cornered the market on it, and so because they do it, I think, with such frequency, other theaters may be a little bit less inclined to do it, but theaters have started to do it a little more in their own way over the course of the past few years. Yeah.
And Washington has become quite the theater city. I went to college, undergraduate college in Washington, and really there was just Arena Stage in the National Theater and some of the stuff at Kennedy Center. But now, and there were dinner theaters, but now there just seems to be a proliferation of theaters not only doing plays and comedies, but musicals as well.
The Olney Theater has been around for a long time. The Olney Theater, I did 2 shows at the Olney. I love the Olney Theater. I love Washington. I love Washington Theater in general. I love the community out there. It's fantastic.
I'm
at the Olney right now. Actually, I'm in previews for a play that I open this weekend. And it is a wonderful community that I'm blessed to.
Oh, it's great.
What is the play that you open this weekend?
It's a play called The Amateurs, written by Jordan Harrison, who was a Pulitzer Prize finalist for Marjorie Prime, and it was off-Broadway a couple years ago, and this is its first regional production.
And Evan, you're directing it. Evan Pappas, you're directing at the moment. Which show?
A lot. Cabaret at my theater. And then I'm actually, after Cabaret opens, I'm also doing Mystery of Edwin Drood at Manhattan School of Music. They have a great program now, run by Liza Gennaro and David Loud. So I'm doing a lot of double and triple duty, and after this, I'm going down to Hilton Head to do Kinky Boots, and it's kind of crazy. But I wanted to throw something in real quick. One of the best times I ever had, one of the best Sondheim times I ever had, was when I was in putting it together on Broadway with Carol Burnett and George Hearn. And I went in to take over for a few weeks, and it really was one of the best times I ever had in this business with all those people and doing all those pastiche songs. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. I just wanted to throw that in and shout out to those people that I got to work with. To work with some of my idols was brilliant. It was just.
Was that the Eric Schaefer directed production, Evan?
He did that. And Bob Avian choreographed it. Yeah, and Bob Avian and I go back years and years and years and years and years. Yeah. In fact, Bob Avian is the reason why I ended up in Follies in London. Because they had David, earlier you asked, you said it was a great company of actors in the Follies production, and it was. It was Diana Rigg, Daniel Massey, David Healy, Julia McKenzie, Dolores Gray. You could go on and on. And they didn't have a young David Healy over there who was American and who lived there. And so I matched his energy, and I looked like him, and the rest is history. Bob Avian said, "Oh, we've got young David Healy in New York," and there it was.
And when does Cabaret open? Tell us a little bit about Argyle, so that and give a website so people that travel into New York could possibly go.
Yeah, we're really close to the city. We're not even an hour from Penn Station. It's Babylon Village is the most charming little village full of great bars and restaurants and shops, and the theater. We open Cabaret March 14th. As I said, we're in tech right now, and we're ending our second season. We're about to embark on our third. It's a lot of work. The website is Argyle Theater with an RETRE.com.
Terrific. Terrific.
Check us out. We're doing some good stuff out there, and the talent and the creatives and everything I've been able to bring in. It's been a whirlwind. It's been wonderful. We're very, very proud of what we've accomplished in just 2 years. Yeah. Thanks for asking about that. I appreciate it.
And this is your first stab at being an artistic director of a theater company, correct?
Yeah. I didn't know I knew as much as I did, and still learning along the way. Yeah.
I bet. When your career switched from acting to directing, you were actually at an opera company that maybe a couple of hours north of here, less than that, in Lebanon, New Hampshire.
Opera North.
Opera North, which is the only professional opera company in New England outside of Boston, and. But you did musicals there.
I did. I directed. What did I start with? West Side Story, and then the next summer I did Evita and the Daughter of the Regiment, and then my first opera, and then the next year I did Kiss Me, Kate, and the next year I did Barbara Seville. That was a blast. I had a great time with Barbara Seville. Opera North is a wonderful company run by Evan Tail, my friend. He has done a remarkable job. Him and Louis Burkhardt, they've just done a remarkable job up there. Y'all should check it out.
Okay, and Evan Casey, how long are you going to be at the play at Olney?
We run for about a month till the beginning of April. Yep.
And with all the political stuff that's happening these days, the Capitol Steps must be adding a lot of material every week.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot happening on a daily basis, for better or worse. It's just hard to keep in front of what's going on with the current administration. But, of course, also now there's the challenge of candidates are dropping out left and right, and the race is narrowing. So we're having to remove a lot of songs that we had previously about other candidates and streamline and find new things. So that brings a new challenge as well.
So you can take a break from the Capitol Steps and do a play or a musical and come back. How much rehearsing and reorientation do you have to do to step into Capitol Steps after doing a play at Olney?
Depends on how long I'm gone. Sometimes if I'm if I still continue to perform in shows in the Steps while I'm rehearsing, and I can make that work, and then I'm not gone for quite as long. But if it's a layoff of several months, then it could be quite a few songs I have to learn. And usually, my producers will keep me updated. They'll keep me on the list of like, these are the new things and these are happening. So I'll get to sort of learn on my own time, which is sort of how we operate in the Steps. Anyway, we sort of rehearse on our own. We get the lyrics, and they say, like, here's the original. Run it through for yourself, and then we get to rehearsal with the rest of the cast and the accompanists, who are really the most talented ones in the show, because they say, like, what do you want this in, G? No, A flat? Is that better? And then they'll just just play it by ear and sing and play it however you want. And then you run through it a few times with them, and then try it in front of an audience and see what sticks.
Okay, we're going to take another break to acknowledge underwriters, and we segue into that with a famous Stephen Sondheim musical from Company. It's called You Could Drive a Person Crazy. This is Artsbeat Radio on 89.5 FM WSKB. I'm Mark Auerbach. John Pike is sitting with me at the anchor desk. Peter Coles is our chief engineer, and online we have Evan Casey and Evan Pappas, and we'll all be right back.
You could drive a person crazy. You could drive a person mad. First you make a person hazy, so a person could be had. Then you leave a person dangling sadly outside your door, which it only makes a person gladly want you even more. I can understand a person if it's not a person's bag. I can understand a person if a person was a fag. But worse than that, a person that titillates a person and it leaves her flat is crazy. He's a troubled person. He's a truly crazy person himself. It's Larry Loser. When a person's personality is personable, he should not sit like a lump. It's harder than a matador coercible to try to get you off your rump. So single and attentive and attractive a man is everything a person could wish. But turning off a person is the act of a man who likes to pull the hooks out of fish. Knock, knock, is anybody there? Knock, knock, it really isn't fair. Knock, knock, I'm working on my job. Knock, knock, a zombie's in my arms. Oh, that sweet affection, what is wrong? Where's a loose connection? How long
could drive a person buggy. You could blow a person's cool doo-doo. Like you make a person feel all huggy. Why you make her feel a fool doo-doo. When a person says that you upset her, that's when you're good. You impersonate a person better than a zombie should. I can understand a person if he wasn't good and dead. I can understand a person if he actually was dead. Exclusive you, elusive you. Will any person ever get the juice off you? You're crazy. You're a lovely person. You're a moving, deeply maladjusted, never to be trusted, crazy person. You're dead. Bobby is my hobby and I'm giving it up.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Hi, this is Harry Rock, host of Rock on Westfield every fourth Wednesday at 8 a.m. Tune in for my view of this place I call home.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Welcome back, everyone. We're celebrating Stephen Sondheim's 90th birthday today on Artsbeat Radio. I'm Mark Auerbach. John Pike is sitting next to me here at the anchor desk, and on the phone we have Evan Casey from the Capitol Steps, who's performed so many Sondheim roles in Washington, D.C. theater, where he's well known, and Evan Pappas, the artistic director of the Argyle Theater in New York, who has starred in and directed. He's got Sondheim written all over his career, among every other things. John Pike, you directed a famous Sondheim flop called Anyone Can Whistle last fall in Hartford. That was quite the show.
Oh, it was quite the challenge. For those listeners who don't know much about the show, it's a Sondheim show that only ran about a week on Broadway in 1964. That basically took pot shots at everything that was going on in society during the 60s in terms of race relations, in terms of mental capabilities of people, and probably the most complicated show that I've ever directed. And it was a piece by Sondheim and Arthur Lawrence, who decided to kind of mix musical comedy with theater of the absurd. And it probably is the only time that's been done in musical theater to this date.
Hey, John, I also did, I'm just going to jump in. I also did the production that they did at Carnegie Hall years ago with Bernadette Peters. I was a part of that. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I went to that concert.
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
I remember. And wasn't Madeline Kahn in that too?
Yeah.
Yeah, Madeline Kahn.
And Scott Bakula.
Scott Bakula, yeah. It was a good time. All those people. It really was a good time.
I have the recording of that. I was supposed to go, and a high school classmate of mine was dating Madeline Kahn and got us tickets to go to the concert, but we missed the train. So I never got to see it. Yeah, Change in New Haven. I was on the wrong track.
But you got the recording.
I got the recording. It's great. You know, it's a show that keeps getting revived and revived. And, I mean, it's definitely a flawed show, but the music is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a ballet in it, the Cookie Ballet, that I could sit and listen to all the time.
There's actually 3 ballets in it. And very rarely do the other 2 performed. And we actually did all 3 in our productions because we were connected with a dance school as well. But
and it was sold out. I mean, in Hartford, you couldn't get tickets. You couldn't buy tickets off of somebody who had tickets.
It's only because it's done so rarely. I think that people, when they find this Sondheim, it's like this one and possibly The Frogs and maybe one other, that whenever there's a production, the Sondheim fans find it and want to see make their own judgments on the production.
Now, John, we haven't gotten a chance to ask you what you're up to these days. I know that you're teaching at Hart. Are you directing anything in the upcoming months?
Not in the upcoming months, but in the summer I'm directing actually a play, a production of An Enchanted April, which will be at Little Theatre Manchester.
you teach during the school year, and then the summers you get to conduct or direct and do whatever you want.
That's correct. Sometimes I worked with the Connecticut Repertory Theater and sometimes other theaters.
Yeah, I got to see a really nice production of How to Succeed that you did at Nutmeg Summer Theater a couple of years ago. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was with Terry Mann, who is the artistic director now.
Yeah, and I saw a photograph the other day. The guy that played Finch, the performance, the press night, was really weird because the sound system went out and he sang over the orchestra and everything. He's now in Wicked.
Yeah, it's Riley Costello. Yeah,
young guy. And all that. Evan, what's up? Evan Pappas, after Cabaret, what happens next for you?
Well, we have a whole season lined up, starting with Mamma Mia and Footloose, and we're doing a brand new Joe Iconis musical called Punk Rock Girl, which is very exciting, a world premiere, and Elf, and then Buddy Holly Story, and then we're closing with 42nd Street. So another big season. We don't do them small at the Argyle Theater, I'm telling you, and I am very excited about it.
And Evan Casey, after you finish Only, will you be going back to Capitol Steps? And what's the next musical or play in your mind?
I will go back into the Capitol Steps for a couple months, and then I have. Similarly, Evan Pappas and I aren't only linked by first names. Our careers seem to be similarly structured right now. I'm going to be performing in Mamma Mia. At Signature Theater is producing a larger scale production of it at the Anthem, which is a large scale concert space on the Wharf in D.C. I'm performing in that, and then I'm also directing a production of Cabaret at a summer college theater. So I'm doing those two things. That's a significant portion of my summer, and then it will be all Capitol Steps all the time as we figure out what's going on for this presidential election as we go heading into November through the fall. So
Evan Casey, I'm going to get you out to. Evan Casey, I'm going to get you out to my theater.
That sounds great.
Evan Casey, I was telling John Pike during the break that you were profiled not long ago in the Washington Post, that your wife is also an actor on the Washington theater scene, and the two of you just work constantly.
Yeah, we've been very, very lucky. We came along as professionals really at a time when the D.C. theater scene was booming. We both went to school for musical theater. Well, Tracy, my wife, went to school. She was a voice major, but also studied musical theater, both at the Catholic University in D.C. And we started working professionally while we were in school. And then once we were out of school, we just, we had thoughts of moving to another city, to New York or L.A. or Chicago when we first graduated. But it took us a very short time to realize that we had everything we needed right in this community. It's been very good to us. We continue to get to do a wide variety, diverse section of work at a wide variety of theaters. We're able to maintain a great personal home life with community and friends here as well, and we just love being able to make art and make a life here.
And you have a young son. Has your young son been to theater yet?
He has. He comes quite a bit, actually. There's some wonderful family theater here in D.C. that we've taken him to several times, but he's also seen some larger scale things. He went to see Annie at Only Theater. He went to see, my wife was in Matilda last summer. He saw that 4, 5, 6 times. He saw me in Into the Woods, of all things. Not that wouldn't work for kids, but he saw the whole thing, not just Act 1. So he embraced it all for like 4 or 5 times. So yeah, he's into theater, which is great.
Do you either of you listen to Sondheim at all when you're either not working or commuting or
all the time?
Any particular score that appeals to you more than others, or any favorites?
Oh, that's so hard for me. I do know at the moment, my partner and I, we've been listening. There's this amazing jazz album of his stuff. It's just purely jazz. I'm so bad I don't know the name of it. It's so good that we listen to that all the time.
Yeah, for me, there was on New Year's Eve, I think, great performances, or one of the PBS shows did. Bernadette Peters hosted it, and Katrina Lenk sang, but it was an all-orchestral suites based on Sondheim musicals. And I've been listening to that. I find that without the words sometimes, just to hear the music, it arranged for orchestra is fascinating.
For me, it's funny. I don't necessarily listen to scores or of his all the way through, but I will find myself when I really need to just have a big emotional session for myself, some sort of catharsis, like you need a good cry or something. I'll find some of my favorites that make me have feelings, and I'll say I'm gonna listen to Sunday now, or I'm gonna listen to. I'm going to listen to Every Day a Little Death, or something like that. I'll be like, I'm going to just sit here and go work through my emotions with Sondheim for a while.
Yeah, you can't.
So true. It's so true.
Yeah, you can't casually listen to Sondheim. I mean, you can't throw it on as background music. Well, you could. I mean, I find that I can listen to parts of Follies while I'm working on something else, or a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, or something like that. But I end up getting
Richard Rodney Bennett.
Yeah,
Richard Rodney Bennett. That's the jazz.
Oh,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
I highly suggest it.
And what is it called?
What's it called?
Yeah, the album.
A Different Side of Sondheim, I think it's called.
Okay, I gotta go find that. I'm sure it's on YouTube or Spotify or something along those lines.
Yeah. Yep.
So, John Pike, what's the next Sondheim you want to direct?
Well, I'm coming in a phase right now of listening to Pacific Overtures, a show that I will probably never get a chance to direct, but I can dream.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see. It was revived a few years ago.
It's been revived actually twice, and once off-Broadway about 10 years after the original production, and then a production that was done by Roundabout about 12, 13 years ago. But it's very, very, a very tricky production to revive.
I remember working the box office at Kennedy Center when it rolled through, and I never got to see it, unfortunately. But there was one sequence. The sets were phenomenal, and a warship
It's a
emerged
giant
out of
origami.
an origami dragon that
turns
was,
into a ship.
Yeah. And that, to me, it was such a startling physical thing on the stage, but I never got to see the whole show.
If you want to see what that looks like, that is one of the models that is at Lincoln Center Library, that origami ship that appears for Four Black Dragons is the name of the song.
Well, gentlemen, we're about out of time celebrating Sondheim's birthday. I hope we can gather in 10 years for his 100th, if you guys are willing.
That would be great.
That would be great.
Okay, maybe in the interim, and we've got 10 years to do it, all of us can do at least one more Sondheim show before we come back.
We'll plan on that.
I'm on board.
Okay,
sounds
great.
good.
We've been chatting with Evan Casey from the Capitol Steps, who appears in many Sondheim musicals on the Washington theater scene, where he's done Assassins, Sunday in the Park with George, and Into the Woods, and Evan Pappas. And Evan Pappas did Follies in London and is now the artistic director of the Argyle Theater in Babylon, Long Island, New York. And John Pike here, formerly of Goodspeed and now Hart School of Music. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. This has been a really great show. Peter Coles has been our chief engineer. We are broadcasting from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, and some of the people in the background are high school students who are learning the art of broadcasting and sound engineering, and we appreciate them being here. I'm Mark Auerbach, and we'll be here next Friday with another edition of ArtsBeat Radio and Television. And we leave you today. I picked one Sondheim song that I particularly like. It's from Sweeney Todd. It's called Greenfinch and Linnet Bird, and this is from the original Broadway cast recording. Everybody have a good weekend.
Greenfinch and linnet bird, nightingale, blackbird, how is it you sing? How can you jubilate sitting in cages, never taking wing? Outside the sky waits beckoning, beckoning, just beyond the moors. How can you remain staring at the rain, maddened by the stars? How is it you sing? finch and linnet bird, nightingale, blackbird, how is it you sing?